You know, as a lifelong Halo fan, I really wish it didn't turn out this way, but at the very least, there's a lot we're going to learn in this video, and a lot that helps to explain why the hell things have been the way that they are. Now, if you played Halo back in your Xbox 360, and you checked in with Campaign Evolved, you probably thought, oh wow, these graphics are great, there's some nice quality of life features, and maybe you were happy enough, which is totally fair. But if you're a Halo fan, someone who knows the series in depth, you likely had quite a different experience. What did they do to the Magnum, for one? Why do none of the cutscenes feel right? Now that's one that more than just Halo fans will feel. Something in those cutscenes is just wrong. And then, well, your ears will start to say, where's the music? And if you try to listen, you will hear some of it, but it will be very low in the mix. A mix that is so muddy that it all just feels like mush. Which is absolutely mad. I mean, this is Halo. The music should be front and center. Now, it would be very easy to just chalk this all up to Halo Studios just getting it wrong again. And sure, there's some of that, but the more we investigated, well, the more there turned out to be other things as well. But the broad theme of development organization, be it called Halo Studios or 343 Industries under Microsoft, struggling to fill in for Bungie, well, that's still on theme. They are still searching for a coherent take on what Halo actually is, and if you take a look at the prequel missions, which were the new bits of content they made, you'll absolutely know that they weren't able to find it. Now, if this was just a bit of a disappointment, then that's all the story would be. The 63% user score on Steam would really be about right, you know? It's fine, it's not great, it's probably not worth its full price, and for a lot of players, that is really the story with this game. A game that we now believe has not sold particularly well. But thanks to some staffing changes made just days after launch, we can start to unpick how this keeps on happening. And part of this is going to shock you. It's not that they're still struggling to get Halo right, it's that 343 Industries was founded nearly 20 years ago in 2007. Halo Studios is a rebrand for 343, so fundamentally, this is 2 decades of a studio organization just struggling to get it right. Our story kicks off barely a week after Campaign Evolved launch, when staff started announcing their departures on LinkedIn. Rebs Gaming spotted this first, and then outlets like Insider Gamer picked up the story. One of them was a producer called Nick Treatman, 6.5 years spent in the franchise, and as he put it, 6.5 years dodging pretty much just as many layoffs at the company. Pretty rough. Another, Paul Morris, had a peak 2010 software engineering job title of Scrum Master. Of course, he's not going to be the master of scrums anymore because he's laid off after 2 years on the job. These people are not executives, they're not new hires, they're basically the kind of middle-rung people that a studio actually runs on, the sorts of people that really form a lot of the headcount. And we see that a week after shipping, they were gone. Now, your first thought was probably the same as mine and my team's, right? It's just layoffs again. Maybe it's Xbox's CEO, Asha Sharma's big 1,600 more job cuts that are going to be coming over the coming months. Surely it's that. No, it's actually not that. You see, an unofficial source told GamesBeat that there was no layoff here. It was just a typical contractor shuffle, and that's a story that's been following 343 and Halo Studios for quite some time. Now, we've got no official statement from Xbox in this story, but if you go to Moby Games and you check the credits for Campaign Evolved, you do see that Treatman, Morris, and around 50 other people have the same words after their name. Aquint LLC. Now, Aquint are a staffing contractor, and after a lot of digging around, we found no evidence of any non-Aquint staff being let go. So, that would mean that this looks like Microsoft's quite well-documented contractor policies doing exactly what they're designed to do. The game shipped, the deal's ended, the people are gone, and it's technically not a layoff. Yeah, I mean, it really isn't a layoff, but it is part of a development practice that has obviously hurt Halo over time. But where the story gets even more interesting is if you do something that almost everyone skips, which is just read the full credits for Campaign Evolved. Because if you do that, you'll know that, well, Halo Studios could get rid of a lot of people before they would ever need to do something called a layoff. And that raises a better question than just asking who's left. And that question is, well, who actually made this game? 26 companies. That is how many are credited on Halo Campaign Evolved, and Aquint are just one of those companies. There's loads of them. Now, some of them are internal Xbox studios, others are translation houses. That's expected. But there's also the likes of Keywords and Virtuos, which are massive contracting companies. And between just those 10 groups, there were 10 studios who worked on this project, and that's covering QA, lighting, art, mocap, audio, cinematics, really the whole lot. Now, you may be looking at this and connecting the dots. It all seems a bit messy, so surely this is why Campaign Evolved feels wrong. It was farmed out to hundreds of external staff and then shoved out the door. Except that fully believing that would be falling into the Warcraft 3 Reforged trap. You see, when that game shipped very broken, outsourced art assets ended up taking a lot of the blame. Personally, I think those assets made the game look a little bit more like Raid Shadow Legends, but really with Reforged, as we would later find out, so much of it was on Blizzard's end. Project management, scope management, that sort of thing, and how Blizzard just got it all wrong. And of course, plenty of successful games are made with outsourced teams. It is extremely standard these days, and in a way, those outsourcing services do provide something the industry really needs, because if you can only make your game with people that you can full-time hire in your company, then we're very much back to the older days of boom bust. At the very least, with outsourcing houses, well, you can have a bunch of developers, and then the people running the outsourcing house can just go and get as many contracts as they can, which could be good for stability. Obviously, though, for the people at Aquint, that was not the case. But what we've overall learned and came to understand is it's really the people, the organization directing all of this effort, that's really where the fault lands. And when you start to piece together all the stories around this game, it sure looks like Campaign Evolved is the same deal. Here's the best example probably. You may remember Glenn Israel from last year. He was an art director, and very much a Halo Studios employee. Though by the time most of us became aware of him, he was, very much not a Halo Studios employee anymore. In a wider complaint about studio leadership, he pointed to a specific event in August 2025. Quote, "The catastrophic mismanagement of Halo Campaign Evolved." That's his post, and it's when his art team was pulled off an unannounced project and reassigned. And the good news for us as reporters is that more recent reports do suggest a little more of what that mismanagement may have looked like. Rebs Gaming has done a lot of deep diving in this and has alleged that Abstraction Games, an established co-development studio, was removed from the project halfway through. The studio isn't actually in the credits, but you can see individual staff at that studio appearing in the special thanks for the game. You may not know this, but quite often the special thanks segment of the credits, well, sometimes they are special thanks, though sometimes they're just used to brush things under the rug. Now, Rebs Gaming's sources say that Abstraction were on Campaign Evolved until October last year at the very latest, and they were doing technical level design stuff. That means scripting encounters, AI, that kind of thing. And then they were removed entirely, and most of their work ended up, going with them. And that meant that the remaining staff in the project had to go and pick up the pieces. And by the same accounts, the outsourced cinematic team didn't have it great, but at least did have it slightly better. They struggled, but they did actually ship for launch. Obviously, though, the cinematics are, I would say, the cinematics feel like they were done by like an AI coding agent. Maybe like an older one, and I'm not alleging this, I don't think it's what was actually done, but it's the sort of thing where when you're putting together a cinematic, right, there's all of those little minutiae of timing, of a character's facial expression. Those things that if you were perhaps completely project manager pilled, you could see as just being nice little bits of polish at the end. But of course, from a player's perspective, when they're trying to engage in the art that they're being presented with, well, if all of the characters seem like they're weird aliens, well, all the human characters, that's probably not good. And that is what happened. Now, in both of those instances with the cinematics people and the other team, Rebs' sources describe the same pattern going on. Leadership with impossible expectations, a hostile environment, and no real support for their developers. Now, part of this comes down to how ambitious their tech plan was. You see, back in October 2024, 343 Industries rebranded as Halo Studios, and they announced a full move to Unreal Engine for their next game. Woohoo! Now, this would lead to multiple teams and multiple games. Halo was going to be back. And one of those games was Campaign Evolved. Now, going off the LinkedIn profiles that Rebs dug through, some of Abstraction were on it as early as 2023. And that is right when the studio's leadership was rotated out. But here's the thing with this story, right? Campaign Evolved is not a full Unreal project. It is actually still Halo's old Blam engine with Unreal basically doing a lot of the visual design stuff, basically. And you can kind of see the logic here, because it's very similar to the Oblivion remaster that was started on back in 2021, and it was really the exact same pitch. It still is Oblivion, but we're going to do all of our visuals through Unreal. And hey, game looked pretty great, and the potato faces of the Oblivion characters just looked so much more entertaining. What a great time, and of course, that game sold really well. So why did the same thing not happen for Halo? I mean, especially Halo Combat Evolved. It's a game that already had been remade once, and that in many ways isn't as complicated as a huge Bethesda RPG. Well, the difference seems to be what leadership expected and how little support they gave. According to Rebs' sources, assets couldn't just be ported across. No, they basically had to be remade in Unreal, and that ate up a huge amount of time and effort. Leadership got the scope wrong, they got the timeline wrong, and they, well, just pressed on anyway. Whatever that would take. They pulled teams from other projects, they cancelled work, and that was all because, more than anything else, getting Campaign Evolved out the door at all feels like a bit of a compromise. So, that's how Campaign Evolved got made. And the frustrating bit is you can actually see at places the great game that exists within it. I really do think that a few more months, a few more passes, maybe re-recording some voice lines, redoing those cinematics, a bunch of little things like that, could have made this a truly worthy remake. But instead, well, we got what we got, which is the guts of a great remake, but none of the polishing or just finishing off of the project that would actually make it great. So, why the hell did they just not delay it? So that it would come out when it's good, and so that the story around this game could be way more similar to the one around Oblivion. People weren't saying that the Oblivion remaster was kind of like the Resi 4 remake that was so much, I guess, don't want to say elevated, but so much work had went into it, I guess to the point where it really was a new game. No, it was the same old Oblivion, just in Unreal. I mean, the template was there, it was done by an Xbox studio working with the likes of Virtuos, who of course worked on this game as well. So why did nobody think to move the date? Well, I'm sure they did, but obviously those who thought that got shot down. From what we can tell, Halo Campaign Evolved basically had to come out this year. More than that, it had to come out in this exact window. Xbox's 25th anniversary couldn't pass without a visit from Mr. John Halo himself. And with Grand Theft Auto pushing Call of Duty backwards, and of course Fable forwards, the whole year would have just otherwise been resting on Forza and Gears of War. That would not be good enough because, of course, we do need the quarterly line to go up. And if the line would be going up, say, in 2 quarters' time rather than right now, oh dear, we may have to demonstrate some discipline by cutting more of our studios. You know how it goes. And because of all that, hundreds of outsourced developers and internal staff were pushed to make the date for this game. And a crazy thing is some of this is even in the public, because this game didn't go gold until 9 days before launch, and it still shipped the way that it did. That tells us that it was a monumental sprint to the finish line, and one that really didn't need to happen. From all we can tell, development seems to have began in 2023. So, 3 years to make one campaign again. That's it. Not an impossible ask. We've seen it be done. Now, yeah, there is more to it. There's 4-player co-op, there's the new prequel missions, less said about them the better, but the point is that the scope of this game wasn't insane, and based on everything we know from other development studios and other projects, it really should have been possible in time. But it appears somewhere along the way, a choice was made. And that was that no matter how leadership got the game to this point that we're in right now, the date would be hit. Whatever could be shipped would just have to be enough, even if it couldn't be finished. I mean, there was no one who would look at those cinematics that look like they're done by an AI or maybe an alien. An alien would make more sense. You know, aliens would have different body language, a different sense of timing, right? That would almost make more sense. But no, it was obviously something far more terrestrial. Mismanagement. And the people who learned the hardest lessons shipping this game, Well, a week after launch, their contracts ended. And that means that whatever this whole effort taught humans, well, Halo Studios doesn't really get to keep that. It doesn't get to keep much of the experience that was gained making this. And that says something fairly goddamn bleak about Halo's future. When Campaign Evolved was announced, the read of things is fairly simple, right? Infinite was there, could carry multiplayer. Campaign Evolved would let Halo Studios just get a grip on the franchise under the sort of new tech mandate, right? Moving everything to Unreal. Assets from Campaign Evolved could feed into the next game, people would learn new things, and the prequel missions would be a chance to compare and contrast, to see, can we make content that can actually play side by side along stuff we know is good, because it's the original Combat Evolved. But no, that obviously didn't work. And for me, this is the black pill on Halo. I'm a lifelong Halo fan, but honestly, it's time to let John sleep. No more. It may as well be dead to me now. This has been so continually mismanaged that I don't even see the point in caring about Halo anymore. And for me to say that is kind of insane, given where Halo was, given what energy was there, say in 2007 with Halo 3 launch night, No, it's gone. They've lost it, clearly. And it's those prequel missions that are the clearest example. For a lot of longtime fans, me included, they really are the worst thing there. It's so strange. We like Johnson, but him and Chief, well, Skill Up put it as they're sort of buddy cop or buddy comedy characters in some of their timing and stuff, which is just not Halo. It's not those characters. And if you're doing Halo CE, something where you've got a clear blueprint of what good looks like, and you manage to mess up the tone, you manage to mess up the characterizations, well, that just speaks volumes. The one slice of new content in this game was the weakest by far. And that leaves me with two readings, neither of which are comforting. Either the people steering the franchise simply do not get it, or the people actually making it do get it, and the structure above means that, well, everything ships as a first draft. Because nothing gets the time it needs to become a second draft, or hell, even something that you could call, V1 final-2-final, really, I mean it this time, which I think is how a lot of classic game dev ended up going. And the rest of the game really does tell the same story. Little things like getting the Magnum wrong, breaking the combat model of the game by changing the assault rifle to the point where it's effective at completely different ranges to where it was in the first game. That's really bizarre. Now, I'm not necessarily someone who sees Sprint in Halo and just has a heart attack or something, but think about it. If you have Sprint, then surely that will just make the traditional AR, a more closer sort of range weapon, be, a little bit more useful, but still firmly within its niche. But no, what do? You add in Sprint, and then you change one of the core weapons in the game such that it's really good at mid-range and close range. Just those weird decisions that don't seem to make sense. The cutscenes, many other things. And what's weird is none of those problems feel unsolvable. They do not. It just feels like work that needed one more pass, maybe two more passes. But that was never going to happen, because the people making this game were never given the time, obviously. Now, should they have needed as much time to do this project? I would say almost certainly not. But then again, when we take a look at, say, the mismanagement, when we take a look at what Glenn Israel was saying, it's hardly a surprise that a lot less than 3 years of good quality work emerged from this 3-year development process. Now, the game does mostly work, and 6 in 10 Steam reviewers are fine with it, it seems. But we do know that other things were cancelled to get this out the door. There's Project Ecker, which was seemingly Tatanka. That stuff was fully killed in the name of moving warm bodies onto this project. We of course know that Halo Infinite has pretty much been stopped. Now, the hope, clearly, from maybe the bigger decision makers here, is that Xbox would be able to do what Capcom is able to do. Flashy, amazing quality remakes that allow them to build their franchise back up for younger audiences, as they did so successfully with Resident Evil. And I just saw some numbers earlier that a really large portion of, I think Resi Requiem's audience base was, well, young enough that they're probably not original Resi fans. That shows that this model goddamn works, but you actually have to commit to it and do it right. And that's something that Microsoft appears to be structurally incapable of doing. Halo Campaign Evolved has not created the kind of excitement that it needed to, and it doesn't seem clear to me that Halo Studios will become any more competent at being Halo Studios. Stepping back then, it's obvious that between the contractor issues, the leadership problems, there is just no solid foundation to build from here, which is why I'm happily taking my Halo Black Pill. That's it for John, let the man rest. I've got no doubt that within this project there was loads of talented, passionate individuals, but I just think they were obviously not able to overcome the nightmare, the enduring nightmare that Halo development has been and seemingly somehow still is. Halo was the game everyone else copied, and now the studio built to carry it can't even copy itself. That's my real verdict. After 19 years of reboots, rebrands, rotated leadership, and all of that, Microsoft still can't be trusted with Halo. The anniversary gave them the perfect moment to prove otherwise, and instead they proved, well, all of our worries and suspicions by shipping this game when it wasn't ready. Fuck Microsoft, man. That's it for the video. After the kind of grim mood of this one, you may enjoy bad things happening to Roblox, which you can check out in the next video.